Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing very well. So, I've had this requested a few times, but today's valued viewer requested question is from Hithin Jose GF. Cap's opinion on Microsoft Flight Sim. I have no idea why you care, but I'm going to tell you. Cap, can you please share your view about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020? This is obviously a big sim that everyone's raving about that's coming out later this year. And I'm pretty much I'm aware of it, obviously, because people have talked to me about it, but I just haven't really had time or the impetus to go and check it out. So we're checking it out today. I've got some guys here with me that know about it. Some of them are on the beta testing team, and so they're only allowed to say certain things, but it means we can get some decent, accurate information, okay? So I've got some bullet points I want to talk about here. I want to talk about the graphics, because that's a big selling point. People talk a lot about that. Second, the flight and the weather engines, because they are, well, they are what they are. Next, the study level interaction, the multiplayer, the real world, if you like, terrain modeling, which is very different from what we've seen before, the planes that we get, when it will come out and the price, etc., compatibility, and should ED be worried? I think there's going to be some interesting discussion. We'll do it in discussion format, it'll be open mic, and that's it. Graphics, okay guys, so we've got the official movie I'm going to watch here. While it's going, please talk to me about why you guys think the graphics are so good. And I don't really want the terrain per se, but the actual graphics. We'll come on to the terrain generation later, but let me know what you think. I'm going to open up full screen here. Got decent internet nowadays, so it should. Yep, looks very good so far. Oh, it does look. Wow, it's a bit better than DCS, isn't it? Is that real graphics?
Yeah. So that's game graphics, and
I'm sold.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Wow, it looks so different to DCS, doesn't it? From what we're used to.
I think what you have here is kind of like a really good combination of a really well-worked lighting engine with fantastic autogen and a really nice sort of texture base that gives you this super real look.
Thing is, though, my view is as soon as you pump up the graphics, the FPS goes down, right? So, you know, we've got the new version of DCS, it looks a bit nicer, 256, the FPS is cut in half. Surely it's going to run shit.
If at least one of the earlier videos they've released on YouTube mentioned that they have taken a lot of the technical parts from game development, so like normal game development instead of these old school flight sims, where the engine is, where the amazing lighting, for example, is much cheaper.
I think the primary difference between kind of Microsoft and ED is kind of like almost like development power. You know, when you think about the amount of money and the amount of people behind Microsoft's operation, and they've been working on this for presumably years. So I would imagine it's going to be very well optimized. And when you consider the other factors that we're going to go on to talk about, I don't think it's going to be as resource intensive as it looks like it will be.
Yeah, and it's all about clever programming, isn't it, guys? We're starting to learn that with ED. Have just come out with a new open beta of 256, the latest version, and it looks a bit nicer. Certainly nothing like this, but it looks a bit nicer, and but it's not optimized at all at the moment. Presumably it will become optimized, and at the moment it runs horrendously bad. I'm running my CPU just with a couple of planes in the air at 100% duty now, and it's lagging and it's clicking out. And that shows, in my mind at least, how optimization is the key, right? You've got to find a way of making it run efficiently. And presumably, because of development power, skills, people they can get, this can be super well optimized and run very efficiently. Would you agree with that?
Definitely.
Okay, so, I mean, yeah, and that's it. And I guess at the end of the day, ED doesn't have the 100-person, guys sitting there just working on the graphics. They've got probably 2 or 3 guys, maybe. Maybe that's the difference, I suppose. And I guess it's all going to be paid for because rather than selling tens of thousands of modules, I'm guessing this is going to sell hundreds of thousands or millions, right?
Certainly with the inclusion of kind of like the Xbox player base, absolutely. I would expect those kind of numbers, yeah.
So the investment's worth it. One thing that piqued my interest a little bit there is that you're saying the graphics were coming from mainstream games rather than, if you like, the dinosaur flight sim world. Could you elaborate on a bit more of that? Are the games really good because of the high investment and stuff, or why are the games so good?
So lighting has, for example, ray tracing, modern technologies for doing lighting have been developed for quite some time, and they keep just getting better and better, as you will see with games that are developed that you don't play for 10 years. DCS has been around for what, 10 years, and you've been playing it all the time, and you're stuck with a lot of old stuff from back then, and revamping new technologies into the old engine is a lot trickier than just starting from scratch like what Microsoft is doing. And then they can immediately use all of the new stuff. And Microsoft also makes DirectX. They make Xbox, so they already have a lot of this technology in the house. So it's really easy for them to pick it up and just start using.
We've got some nice screenshots going down here. This terrain, we'll be talking about these terrains, and they're obviously one of the big selling points of this thing. But it's the thing is, every time a new game engine comes out, you always think it looks photo quality until the next one comes out, and then you think that one looks photo quality and this will look shit. But I guess that's just the way it's going to go, isn't it? But I must admit, it is genuinely impressive if these pictures are all, they're all real, which they appear to be.
I'm not sure, but I think the difference would be between sort of this and DCS is we can blow up all the buildings in DCS, and they have a collapsible structure. You know, like if you blow up one of the skyscrapers, it falls and collapses down. All that has to be modelled, and I'm not sure if that sort of thing is going to be modelled in this. It's certainly not an X-plane. You can't destroy stuff.
It'd be highly unlikely, I would have thought. I mean, there's no reason to, is there?
And I think that's why the maps are a little bit smaller, for DCS, is because as far as I know, every building is destroyable on that map, which has to be modelled.
Yeah, Antti is right there that the buildings in DCS are basically separate objects from the terrain, whereas in this, the buildings could basically be part of the terrain, the one big mesh, and that way you can do way more in less intensive.
Another thing to not lose sight of, in the fact that one of the reasons why DCS will never be able to catch up, presumably, is that there's a lot more going on in the background in DCS. So this, I don't know because I haven't got into it. But I'm guessing there's not as much in the background. I'm guessing that there's not multiple levels of radar scanning targets and having to look for all the line of sight of that. I'm guessing there isn't, AI type planes that are constantly having to be checked for line of sight, whether they can see something, whether their radar can see something. All that's going to be going on in the background of DCS, which is all CPU work, pretty much. And I'm guessing something like FSX, generally speaking, is not going to have to worry about that. So it frees up all these resources for making stuff look pretty. I would imagine that's one thing that Edie would say.
Well, I get the idea that they're going to incorporate an air traffic control capability, but that's just a rumor.
It's minor. It's pretty. In terms of intensity, though, CPU intensity, something like that is just minor, isn't it? Compared to having to check if you're hiding behind a particular house or a tree, and if you get line of sight, all that stuff's constantly going on in DCS. When AI helicopter just moves through the ground, it's constantly checking: is that tree in the way? Is that tree in the way? Think how much CPU that's biting up.
Yeah,
absolutely. But if you think about ATC handling something in Los Angeles area, the amount of planes that have to be handled and scheduled and like everything, it's not that much easier than AI flying a helicopter around trees.
I don't know that the volume has too much of a, like you say, there's a lot less kind of going on in the background in terms of like kind of systems, yeah, precisely right. So you can afford to have that kind of higher volume of AI traffic because it's simple pathfinding, and your air traffic is, it's kind of, it works around that. So say your aircraft will fly from point A to point B to point C. It's not going to go there and blow anything up. It's not going to be looking for evasive maneuvers, or there's no radar. There's no there's nothing like that. So you have that kind of capability.
Yeah. So they are. So in a way, you can't really compare them. They're such different animals, aren't they? Because they know that Cessna is never going to be able to turn on a ground scanning radar, unlike in DCS. So much less preparation has to be done to that map or to that aircraft, and it's all all that preparation. So they're very different. So they can concentrate on selling it by looking super, super pretty. That's kind of what I wanted to look at my list. I wanted to make a list of the selling points, if you know what I mean, the main points.
It is very, very pretty.
Okay, guys, before we move on to anything else, anything about the actual graphics that you want to mention? Okay. Sorry, carry on.
No.
Okay.
Well, it's very difficult what we can actually say because I'm not supposed to say anything, to be
right.
honest.
We've covered plenty. Okay, next is the flight and weather engine. When I asked the guys for what are the selling points of this, they said they had next gen kind of weather and flight engine. And anyone can say that. You can say that about anything. What does that actually mean, and how are you justifying it, guys?
Well, the idea behind it is to have it as realistic as possible. Like DCS is as realistic with all these weapons, radars, and missions and so on. There it tries to be as realistic as possible with real life. So to have every single airport available and that.
I mean, yeah, so what I'm really getting at here is the engines, guys, the flight dynamics. Why is the flight dynamic engine so good? Why is it next gen, quote marks? And why is the weather engine next gen? Can it do weather that other sims can't? Can it model turbulence and stuff, or flight dynamics that other sims can't?
Yeah, there is turbulence in it. You can have real world weather, or you can set the weather how you want it. But you can do the same with that in X-Plane and P3D. Like in X-Plane, you can set the clouds to, I think it's 3 different layers, and each layer of clouds, you can have anything you want in that weather system, or you can put on a program that will turn on real world weather. I think the real world weather is actually incorporated into this as default.
It will, from what I understand, yeah. The Flight Simulator X used to do the same thing, but then they turned off the system for various different. I think the most innovative thing in terms of the weather engine for this is the sort of dynamism of it. I think it's. I mean, we see from DCS's weather engine that requires a lot. It's not the best weather. I was maybe not so many words, but yeah, it's not the best. Not the best weather system going. I think what Microsoft have demonstrated in the release material for this is that they have like a really dynamic, moving, almost like evolving weather fronts. We saw it in the launch video just there with the kind of the clouds moving along and changing, and that's something that's kind of really actually quite difficult to do and to do really well. And with the kind of like the range of different weather systems and patterns that they've shown so far, that kind of it certainly at least implies that they've got kind of like this really nice, interesting, dynamic weather system behind it, which we haven't really had in a flight simulator before.
And we do have a dynamic weather system in DCS, and the reason I say it was shit is, it looks quite cool and everything, but to actually go and make a map with some dynamic weather on, i.e. some cyclones, you've got to literally go in and program Lua files. You can't even do it all from the game. You have to go in and, you've got to be a semi-programmer to go and do it, and hence it's not really usable to the average guy. Whereas I'm guessing this here, you can just fly around, load it up, get in, and I'm guessing there's going to be pre-made dynamic weather that's modeled on probably the real world or real world history, or it's just modeled randomly, I don't know. I'm guessing that's going to be much more usable. If it's going to have Xbox users, yes, obviously they're not going to be editing Lua files to get their dynamic cyclones, are they?
Yeah, weather data is public available, so you can just use it, and they use it to model it the world.
Roger. Tell me about, no one's mentioned about the, so I'm guessing it's because Microsoft's not mentioned anything. Tell me about the flight model of the aircraft there. Now, we've got kind of chalk and cheese when we do DCS and X-Plane. I've played X-Plane a few times before, and I remember X-Plane, one of the good things about it is, well, it's good and bad. One of the cool things about it is that it models them real time, models the aerodynamics of the plane real time, because it started off, I believe, X-Plane being an aerodynamic modeler rather than a commercial program that you can fly around in. They just expanded. And so the planes are modeled aerodynamically in real time. And the cool thing about that is you can go into the plane editor and stretch the wings out and see what happens. Stretch the tail, see what happens. Take the tail off, see what happens. And it's all modeled in real time. You can't do that in DCS. DCS is much, it has different levels of modeling, but DCS is much simpler than that. My understanding is you've got tables, you've got pre-calculated things like that. And there's good reasons for that, obviously. Again, partly historically, but also if you've got all these other stuff systems going on in the background, you don't want a really complex CPU heavy flight model. You can imagine how slow it would be. It just wouldn't work. So what are Microsoft's telling us about this? Is it somewhere in between? Is it real-time modelled, kind of every couple of frames, like X-Plane, or do we know? Have they just not said anything?
Microsoft are doing a pretty good job from what I've seen at the moment. They're keeping stum about it. What we have seen is a couple of kind of like clips, relatively short clips, kind of showing off the flight model. There's one that springs to mind. I don't have a link for it, unfortunately, but it was a Cessna 172, and they were showing off the stall and spin modeling and the recovery from that, and how kind of accurate to the real characteristics of the aircraft that is. So that's either a really, really good real-time physics modeling engine, or
pre-calculated,
or it's really, really well pre-calculated.
Right.
I don't.
The answer is we don't know. The answer is we don't know. That's fine. That's
not at the moment.
No, that's fine. That's what you'd expect, really, isn't it? Okay. We probably will find out when third-party modules start appearing, and so they may be really good. They may be crap. We'll have to see. Right. Let's move on to the next point. Study level interaction. So we're used to study level interaction in DTS World. The high fidelity models that have come out, you have to study a 400-page manual, and press all the buttons. You can press all the buttons, and it models more or less all the systems behind those buttons, and so on. In the cockpit, it's basically like flying the real plane, and that's why DTS sells so many modules of its F-18 and its F-16 and its F-14 and so on. This, I believe, is the same type of thing, yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
So I've got this Cessna here. I don't know anything about commercial planes, but I'm looking at the cockpit of this Cessna here, and I can go in and press those buttons, and it's going to work those moving maps and stuff like that. I mean, that's great. You're going to sell, well, one, it means you can sell modules for $50 each or something because they're all clickable, and two, it's just good. That's what you want if you're in a flight sim. You want to press the buttons with your mouse or whatever, don't you?
I know that cockpit works.
Roger. I've not really got much else to talk about that because I just don't know a great deal about. I mean, I'm guessing. Do we know how many systems are modeled in terms of navigation and stuff like that? Is all your TACAN and your VOR, is that all in there? I'm guessing it'd be crazy if it wasn't.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Everything like that will be modeled. It's like with X-Plane when they brought out the A320. Everybody was saying, right, where's the manual for it? And they said, oh, just go to this link, which was to Airbus. And they said,
yeah.
But, we've paid $60 for this, and we want a manual. And the guy in the forum says, no, use this link.
Yeah,
go and download the pilot's manual. And people were still saying, where's the bloody manual? And they're getting right heated. And he says, at the bottom, he says, it's a bloody study level aircraft. Go and download the actual manual from Airbus. All we would do is replicate it. And we went, right, now we see what you're getting at. So everything works in that cockpit as it should. So you get the manual from Airbus, which they've agreed to because it's endorsed by Airbus. You just download the whole manual for the A320, and that's how you learn the aircraft.
Roger. I mean, that's good. That's exactly what you want. I mean, in the top planes in DCS, like the FA-18C, you can, if what you want to do is not in the actual manual, in the game manual, as RC will tell you, I'll send him off to NATOPS, the official aeroplane manual, and he'll get the official aeroplane manual, which is freely available. I don't know how, I'm guessing it's just available, and you just try what's in there, and often it just works, which is quite cool. So yeah, okay guys, all I wanted to know was that it was clickable cockpit, fully modeled, and it sounds like it is. Anything you want to add to study level interaction?
The only thing I'd like to add there is that's only going to get better. Microsoft have openly and freely admitted that they are really kind of looking forward to working with the third-party developers for Flight Simulator. So people like FS Labs, PMDG, Tolis, etc., etc., etc. And they spend an incredible amount of time and an incredible amount of money on, like, even down to like fluid modeling for the fuel moving between tanks in the aircraft and things like that. And so we have that potentially to look forward to for Flight Sim 2020.
Multiplayer, I mean, you'd expect it to be multiplayer nowadays. It's hard to, so much is multiplayer.
Yeah.
I mean, you get in your plane, you fly around, and you can fly in formation with your buddy, basically. Anything else to it than that?
Not really, no. The difference is, I mean, with P3D and X-Plane and FSX, you can link yourselves with a program called VATSIM, and then you will be able to see other aircraft in the game from a different game, and that allows people to fly around the world sort of together and see other people at airports. But it's very finicky. So some aircraft will land on a runway and be hovering 30 feet in the air because they're from a different game.
Yeah, can you imagine?
or the tail appears out of the runway as they're taxiing along because they're under the runway, but with this, I think they're trying to integrate everything into the one game instead of everybody mashing together. So with multiplayer, this is already going to be in the game, and this is where I say where air traffic control and all that lot comes in, because if you're at a very busy airport like Los Angeles and everybody's there for a fly-in time, you need somebody in air traffic control to actually coordinate all this stuff.
Roger. Very good, guys.
It's going to be a complete system, whereas right now what we've got around the world is the three major civil flight sims, FSX, P3D, and X-Plane, all trying to work through a third-party program to bring them all together in a virtual map on the world, whereas this it will be straight out of the box.
Yeah, and that's important, obviously. It should be. It's amazing that they weren't, to be honest. I mean, mass multiplayer it's been going for, I don't know, 15 years? Something now? It's just
20 if you look at World of Warcraft.
Yeah, exactly. If World of Warcraft came out, then everyone had to do it because otherwise nothing would sell. But okay, guys. I mean, it wasn't a massive point, but yep. Next, this is one of the, maybe even the biggest thing, as long as the graphics, real-world modeling, which is presumably way lighter on GPU because it uses internet speed rather than GPU. Let me give a quick synopsis of what my understanding is. So what we're looking at here is not like a map in DCS where it's stored on your hard drive, which is how a traditional game works. The majority of this data that you're looking at here, the Burj Khalifa, the trees, the cars, whatever, it actually is stored on the cloud, whatever the cloud is, and downloaded as you fly about. So, when you move forward by a mile, another mile of terrain is loaded from the cloud through your internet connection rather than through your computer RAM or whatever. You know what I'm trying to get at here. Because presumably the entire world is pretty much modeled, and that comes from obviously impetus like I don't think it's Google. I think it was a competitor of Google, if someone said Google Earth or a competitor. That kind of information collection comes off their cloud. Now that's a really big thing, isn't it, guys? Again, this is in terms of DCS. This is nothing we could ever see in DCS because DCS everything has to be kind of pre-calculated. But as a flight sim that's really there for visual thing, that's a big thing. Is it the first time we've seen it in a flight sim? And what do you guys think about it? And Auntie, you can tell us a little bit. Does it look nice? Does it look shit?
The way that it says in the information about the game is you will get the game, which is so many gigabytes for your hard drive, which will have a decent level of detail for the whole planet. But if you want really high quality, intricate details, like you can see in that picture, then a good internet connection will download you the detail for the area. So you'll still be able to fly it offline. With a reasonable amount of detail, like the same as you get in P3D and X-Plane, I suppose, right now. But if you want the super intricate detail with everything filled in properly, then an internet connection is going to be required.
Have you played it with the internet connection?
Yes. And it looks like that.
And does it... I don't know if you're allowed to say, but if you go up close to the buildings, do they look shit, or...?
No, the buildings look really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Okay, so the way I interpreted it was that the whole world was loaded as you go. So it sounds like the world is on your hard drive to a certain extent, and which is probably, I don't know, 300 gigabytes or something. I don't know, whatever. And then the extra detail gets filled in as you go over. So it's almost like an optional extra, if you like, that you get for free. So that's quite cool.
Yeah, it's like that. And you fly. The first thing everybody does is fly over their own house. And it's cool. The same images that you're getting from Google Earth. So Microsoft would probably bought a license or whatever to access.
I think they're using Bing's because it's Microsoft, so they own Bing.
So
they
use their
own.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, for a flight sim like this, that's cool because you can load that.
But it's definitely satellite data anyway. I can tell you that. Definitely satellite data.
Okay, yeah. So it's a selling point at the end of the day. Is what it is. Anything you want to add to that, guys?
Yeah. So they talked about exactly what someone said, that it's Bing data, Bing Maps, and then they have AI and the cloud adding stuff to that basic set, just the satellite pictures, to create the three-dimensional buildings and all the terrain. And then all of the data takes up petabytes of storage. That's I think it's thousands of gigabytes, terabytes. Sorry, and there's no way you can fit that on a computer. So they only stream in to you what you need to see right now, and that is kept in memory. And then when you fly up way, new stuff streams in, and the old stuff streams out. So with a better internet connection, so it's probably gonna actually, for really high fidelity stuff, it's gonna require quite a bit of connection. Like not probably mobile network somewhere, or satellite's not gonna work at least.
It also depends on the height that you fly. I mean, if you're flying at 30,000 feet, you don't need a massive amount of data. If you're flying like you see in that screen there, low down in there, then you're going to require an awful lot of data.
Whenever we talk about this stuff, I always think my initial reaction is how do you apply this to DCS? The graphics you can't apply it to DCS or not as much. This real world modeling you can't apply it to DCS, because DCS I'm going to press the F2 key and immediately has to jump to the next plane, which might be 500 miles away, and it all has to be there pre-rendered. You can't do that. It's such a different ethos, because in this game I'm guessing you can't just press the F2 button and it jumps to another country and it's all there and preloaded. So that's again a difference how the two systems are going to interact. So, okay, that's fine. Okay, guys, that's very good. Right, let's carry on. Planes that we get, as standard for your $60-70, whatever this is going to cost: Cessna 172, PC-12, Boeing 737, Boeing 747, Airbus, that maybe. So that brings us on to the fact that this is for civilian planes. That's, excuse me, not to say that it can only have civilian planes. It will be able to have military planes as well. Like, for instance, X-Plane that I've played, you can just go and buy an F4 Phantom or an F-16 that a professional developer has developed and sells to you. The same thing will happen in this, presumably, guys?
I would imagine so. Yeah, I think the really important distinction is that it's not a combat flight simulator. You know, it's a, for want of a better phrase, a civilian flight simulator. So it's for your 737s, your Robin 400s, your Cessna 172s to go buzzing around and you know, traveling the world or whatever it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. And needless to say, developers are going to come in, like I said, make planes for it and sell them for so many bucks per plane. There'll be probably high definition, maybe even some low definition, I don't know, and so on. I don't think we need to explain that anymore. Anything you want to add to the types of planes that will be in there before we move on?
Well, we have no idea at this point.
Roger, yep, that's fine. When will it come out and price? These are just predictions we've had from the internet. September 2020, and price $60+, but you know, whatever. Compatibility, as of right now, PC, Xbox, and Xbox X, or whatever it's called, the new, gaming console. What do you guys think about it coming out on a gaming console? Do you buy a joystick and HOTAS? Is that how it works?
No, you're gonna be able to play it with a controller as well. As you can play DCS with a controller if you really want to.
DCS, you gotta have a keyboard. You gotta have a keyboard.
And to add to the price, I just want to mention that they have said that the Game Pass should contain this, like the Xbox Game Pass that they have. So that would be a nice thing to have.
Yeah, but we've seen lots of AAA titles on the Game Pass, The Outer Worlds, etc., and they all sort of retail at $50-60. So I think that's a reasonable price tag. I don't think the whole making it compatible for Xbox is as big as a deal as people are trying to make it, because I think the development team have said multiple times that they're making it, first and foremost for PC flight sim guys. The Xbox compatibility is kind of like it's almost to generate more capital for them, you know. So it's not like it's going to be dumbed down for Xbox or anything.
Oh, that was my question. Do Microsoft own Xbox for a start?
They do, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I was going to say that makes a lot of sense all of a sudden, right there. And my next question was: is it going to be a dumbed down, low IQ version of the Xbox, or is it going to be the same thing? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. They're the same game, aren't they? So
don't know. I mean, what I'm saying
You
is,
can run your Xbox off of, sorry, Cap, you can run your Xbox with keyboard and mouse and joystick and
oh
mouse.
really?
There is plugins for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm probably just too far behind the times, guys. I mean, I left off, you know, on Nintendo 16-bit, where you just get like a few buttons on a control. I guess I'm just too far behind the time. Just purely out of interest, then, on this Xbox, so they're like set units. You don't put graphics cards in them and stuff, do you? Like you do on a PC?
No, they are pretty much set pieces. You buy them with whatever Microsoft decides to throw on them. That's why so many people are curious about this flight simulator and the Xbox Series X because of the processor, the SSD that they're putting into it, and the graphics that they're putting into it. That's why so many people are curious about what's going to go on with this flight sim and the new Xbox that's coming out literally 2 months after Xbox or the Flight Sim 2020 comes out.
What is?
I think
Is it Xbox or is it PlayStation that uses the AMD graphics card?
I don't remember.
Both.
Xbox is going with AMD Zen 2.
So
Imagine, sorry, Cap. Imagine that you have in all the other simulators a simple mode, an expert mode, and something between. So if you just use the controller for the Xbox in that simple mode, for instance, you don't have to click everything. You can just fly around.
yeah,
I think that's it.
So I mean, the first thing I think, you've got a little game controller. How are you going to work the MFDs and all that shit in the cockpit? You aren't, are you? It's going to be impossible. So, but I get the fact it's dynamic and you can add keyboards and add a mouse, so that's fine. Purely out of interest, and I don't want a long answer, but whatever the Xbox is coming out that's going to run this simulator, do we have a rough comparison of a PC, just to show where the Xbox is in the scheme of things, how powerful it is?
Yeah, I got one for you. It's going to have potentially 8K resolution, more or less think of 4K HD resolution. It's going to have the exact same DirectX Ray technology that you can get in your top of the line computers that you got now. And it's going to be completely compatible with anything from Microsoft PC games to the new Xbox that's coming out.
Roger. Okay, guys. Right. So that kind of gets the end of what this game is coming out, what its selling features, because this is not unlike DCS. This is not really a captive market. This is a competitive market. You've got I don't understand fully, but you've got FSX, what became Prepare 3D. Is that what it's called? Which is a weird name, but you got that one. You got X-Plane, which is another one. That's the same. It's basically the same thing, but a different company makes it. It's small differences. So this is a competitive market. It's got to work hard to fight its place. So next, which is the interesting one, and this is why I actually decided to do this video: should ED/DCS be worried? And let's just digest that before. I mean, brackets, X-Plane should be worried. Someone said that in here. Why do you guys think X-Plane should be worried? Just because this is so much better?
I think that's the long and the short of it. If Microsoft get this right, they've got a real opportunity here to essentially blow every other civilian flight simulator out of the water. With from what we've seen, it's it's graphically in terms of flight modeling, in terms of the in-house multiplayer, everything that we've just talked about is kind of, if you combine that, what we have is a platform that is so far ahead of P3D, which is functionally 20 years old, and X-Plane. So no, I think X-Plane should be worried, because if that comes to be, and if this game is everything that I'm hoping that it is just leaps and bounds above everything, ahead of everything.
Until this new simulator is coming out, has there not been a kind of a monopolizer? Has there been a big daddy that's always been the daddy, or has it been equally spread between different games, different sims?
It's kind of a weird order of progression. It was Flight Simulator. Microsoft, very much had the monopoly with Flight Sim 2004, and then Flight Simulator 10, or FSX, and then then there was the whole kerfuffle with Dovetail and selling the rights, and Lockheed Martin upgraded to 64-bit, and you had Prepared P3D, which was something that kind of like high order for a bit, and then X-Plane comes along, and then there was, at the moment it's very much a two-horse race between P3D and X-Plane, and each has their own pros and cons.
Right, and it's good. Competition's good. That's what makes a good product, is having to beat your competitor. What was I going to say? Has anyone actually thought the question, why did Lockheed do that? Don't they make Raptors and stuff? Have I missed the obvious?
Yeah, I think that's why they did it. They initially developed it as like an in-house training tool. So P3D, if you buy it, ships with an F-22 module, and obviously they're dumbed down and declassified and what have you, and it's not a combat simulator. But I believe the reason that that Lockheed Martin developed P3D is for their own purposes,
so
and they're just selling.
So they wanted a Raptor simulator that was just top of the notch in-house, and because they'd done all that work, and this is a lot of how DCS is as well, they've done a lot of that work, right, well, let's sell it to the masses as well, and actually try and get some money back.
Yeah, precisely.
Right, good, I'm glad, because this is all news to me. Right, and that leads to the final question. Should ED/DCS be worried? First response from you guys is no, it shouldn't be worried, and I'll hand over to the mic in a second to you guys, and that is because ED is a combat simulator. It's taken 1995 to 2006, 24 years they've been developing it, year by year by year. It's taken that long to get it where it is now, and it's not all about pretty graphics. That's not its selling point. Its selling point is its interactivity, cockpit interactivity, full multiplayer, and proper full multiplayer with 50 people flying around shooting AMRAAMs at each other, full systems, radars, communications, all this stuff, all tangled together, all muddled in, and it's got the monopoly, right? There's nothing competing with it as far as I can see. There is IL-2, which just competes with a tiny chunk of it, the Warbird chunk, and it does a very good job. We enjoy our IL-2. And there's the Falcon BMS. I've never tried it. I'm sure it's very good, but I'm presuming it's very limited as well. Is that right with Falcon? You've got one plane, or I'm guessing, because otherwise it would have taken over, presumably. So it's not really competing.
Falcon's the F-16.
So it's the F-16. So again, it's a limited thing. I'm sure it's very good, but it's a limited thing. So it's got a captive market, which is fine. And anyway, sorry, Mike got off topic there, but my point was that it's a combat sim. It's based around a combat sim of modeling missiles and radars and stuff like that. And nothing I've seen or what you guys have said in any way have told me that Flight Sim 2020 is going to be a combat sim. In fact, what you've shown me is that it has to be pretty much the opposite. Discuss.
Well, it is at the moment, but we don't know what's going to come.
Roger. And the reason I brought this up was because I've had, obviously I can't mention who they are, but I've had a major developer who develops modules in all of the games that we do, in Prepare, in X-Plane, in DCS, and we all fly in their modules every day, who said that ED should be worried that Flight Sim 2020 will take over in a combat thing. There will be F-15s shooting down F-16s, and there will be Raptors or whatever in there, and it will take over DCS. But I mean, have I missed anything? Where's the evidence? And the reason, let's say they were developing, let's say they were going to develop that, it's going to cost, I don't know, somewhere between $20 and $50 million, I imagine, to develop a full combat sim like that. Let's say they've got that capital to put in there. The problem I've got is a combat sim is mutually exclusive with what they've built here. It's mutually exclusive with the way the terrain works. It's mutually exclusive with the fancy graphics and whatnot, and the detail of the terrain and whatnot. That's just the thing that makes me think that maybe it's false. Maybe it's not going to be turned combat sim. Yes, I get it. People are going to develop F-15s and F-16s and sell them in here. But as far as I'm aware, those F-16s and F-15s aren't going to be turning their Org-9 radars on and scanning the terrain and stuff like that, which is what DTS is all about. I know no one knows the answer to this because none of us have privileged that information. But pretty from layman's point of views, what do you guys think about what I've concluded?
Microsoft had a combat flight simulator at one time.
When was that? And what was it?
In the late 90s, around 2000. So it's conceivable that they could take the engine for Flight Simulator 2000 or 2020 and branch it off into a combat flight sim as a separate application.
I'm
thinking that's going to be years out.
skeptical. I'd be inclined to disagree. I think fundamentally combat flight simulators and civilian flight simulators are
Agree.
entirely different, and as such their architectures have to be entirely. I just don't see, like, until we see some Microsoft launch content of a Typhoon, lobbing a meteor at something 120 miles away, or I just don't see how they can kind of develop like a DCS competitor from the architecture that they have, from what we know is included.
That's what I said. I said they could make this cool 2020 that they've done because it's not a combat sim.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't see. I don't see how you can get that kind of.
It's like on the combat sim. Sorry to say, but the combat sim has to be accessible. It's a big battle map, right? It's a battle map. The Caucasus is a battle map, 500 miles by 500 miles, and I can ever so quickly change my camera from the bottom left to the bottom right, 1,000 miles away, and so all that terrain. The way that combat simulator, all that terrain has to be loaded in, has to all be recalculated. You have to be able to jump to the other side because a missile might lob over, hundreds of miles over the top. Everything suggests that this 2020 is simply completely different in that you only get to experience what's locally around your aircraft. It can't compute all the rest of the world in terms of systems and stuff. It feels fundamentally a different engine, which just strikes me with what the guy told me.
I think,
but they could branch it and use the engine. I mean, it's not inconceivable that they could do that, and Microsoft has the resources to do it, and it's a market they may want to tap. But I think taking the Flight Simulator 2020 as it is, yes, it can't do it. However, I think the engine probably is very capable.
Okay, that's an interesting point. My question with that would be whether Microsoft consider that market kind of valuable enough to be worth kind of like pursuing, because
that's what I thought. How many people are actually going to buy that shit when we're already
if it's on Xbox and you can kill people, yes,
maybe.
It's a viable market.
Maybe.
I suppose that's true. I think it's conceivable that you could have combat aircraft with kind of like surface level combat systems in terms of missiles and a dumbed down version of a radar on what we have in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. But in terms of DCS level,
that won't be competitive DCS though. That won't.
No, of course not.
I mean, it will sell. Don't get me wrong. If you make a stupid combat sim, if you make lovely, pretty graphics, the ability to fire a missile, fucking nothing actually modelled there, it just looks pretty. People will buy it. I get comments every single day on my videos. Oh, is this available on my phone? Well, they're not going to want a clickable cockpit on their phone and detailed radar systems. That's DCS's job. Is keeps everything. That's DCS's area. So if they want to make but my point is, even if they did that, a kind of dumbed down version, it's not going to compete with DCS. It would only compete with DCS if it was a full bore combat sim. From
Tell you what, I'd shoot down a lot of A320s this time.
Yes, you would. Right, with that comment, as he lowers the tone, as he always does, that signals at the end, I think. Cap summary is... Sorry, Auntie, you wanted to...
that's a point Ripcord said. If they did make it combat ready, how many airline pilots would you get that's just taken a trip across the Atlantic, just about to land at JFK or something, and get shot out the air by some little 14-year-old in an F-16? I mean, that would be extremely annoying.
It's fundamentally different. The people who want to fly their commercial plane do not want to be anywhere around missiles. They want to fly relaxed, realistically, by the book. They don't want to be... Yeah, I agree, Auntie. So again, that's another thing that suggests that, at least in its current incarnation, that it can't be combat related, right? Clientele.
Yeah. Because I mean, they're going to be trying to sell this at people who are trying to become pilots, or doing pilot training, because that's what these are all about. This is why they're all study level.
I mean, that comes to that segues nicely into Cap's summary. So this is my personal view of what we've got here. So the thing, are we worried about, should ED be worried about it? From what we can see, at least, I don't think so. Maybe the guy who told me this is highly respected, but maybe he was wrong. I don't know. We'll just see. The game, as it is obviously high graphics, really clever, kind of almost semi-real-time terrain system. It looks like we'll probably have a clever weather system, probably good dynamics in the way the plane flies, study level interaction. IT says this is aimed at people who want to be real pilots. Yeah, honestly, I think it's aimed at everyone. Everyone wants to get in a Cessna and go for a flight. Pay $50. It's just a much easier way of doing it than real life. I say everyone want to play it. No reason not to. For me, and not all of, but some of my guys in GR, it's not our thing, right? I don't want to fly in a Cessna. In real life, you know, it would be cool, but I don't want to play a game in a Cessna. I don't want to play a game in a 737. You know, that's what I want to go on holiday on. I want to fly in a F-16 with really decently well-modeled missiles and radar and all that stuff, and that's what I'm into. In no way is Flight Sim 2020 wrong. It will be more popular than DCS because more people want to fly, just, you know, want to fly the Airbus and stuff and have a nice relaxing ride. That's just not what most of us are into. We want dogfights and highly modelled combat. So that would be my summary. Will I ever play it? Almost certainly not. But it's cool. It's interesting and cool to see what it's done there. And a lot of you watching this video, I've no doubt, will go and buy it and have a great deal of fun. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope this covered the best we can, and we'll see you later.